Coming up on this episode of Flirtations, we welcome Mia Chard to the show to have an important and incredible conversation with us about why it's never too late. That's right. We're talking to the late bloomer concept in dating, which neither of us like at all, and we'll share why. And if you've ever felt like it's too late to start your dating journey, if you don't have much dating experience or aren't sure where to start, this episode is for you, as we'll be exploring the unique challenges and rewards of dating later in life, touching on feelings of loneliness and uncertainty, and even loss when you feel like you may have missed out on certain experiences like the prom or teenage romance. Along with that, we've got a powerful reframe for when you feel like something is missing in your life, and we'll share practical dating strategies and tips to help you navigate the dating world with more confidence, no matter what stage or age of life you're in. So get ready to feel inspired and empowered to embrace your dating journey in new and exciting ways. Now time to meet Mia. Let's do this, flirties.
I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. Hello, my name is Benjamin. I'm the flirt coach and a gay Libra. Everyone has an inner flirt.
Hey, flirty.
Live, laugh, flirt.
Work the flirt.
Work the flirt. Delulu is the Salulu. Expert on the flirt.
Hey, flirty. There's always another flirt.
Everyone has an inner flirt. Get out of your head and into the flirt.
Flirties, we're going to be talking about dating on the show today, of course, and why it is never too late to date with our guest. Mia Chard, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am really excited and grateful for this conversation as I've gotten to know you a little bit over the past few months, mostly through your content on TikTok. And I have so many questions for you today. The Flirties really came through with questions as well. But first things first, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit more about yourself here at the top, your story. Yeah, with the Flirties.
Okay. Yeah, of course. My name is Mia Chard. I'm 42 years old. I live in Utah. I have a whole other life outside of social media and work in kind of social work is kind of my arena. Mm-hmm. But I began talking 2 years ago on social media about my lack of dating history and my lack of experience in that realm. And people really seem to relate to that and connect to that. And so I find a lot of joy in being able to share part of my experience and my story. And I feel like it's something that a lot of people really connect with. And so it's been something really opening or really empowering to be able to share in a way and to connect with people, through social media. And mostly just TikTok is kind of what the platform that I'm using mostly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I've gotten to know you, as I think the first video I saw of yours was about adult loneliness.
Yeah.
That was the one that went, I mean, you've had many that have reached far and wide. That one went super viral. And that is something that I've talked a lot about in my flirting content as well. As I like to say, the flirt is all about connection. And I really just hope to bring more connection into the world and help people make more connections in their day-to-day lives, whether they're dating or not. But that was the one that really was like, oh my goodness. And then I've just been following along your story and your dating, experience as well. So we're going to be getting into all of that. So I think I want to ask you here at the top. So a little bit about your dating history. And so you mentioned you're 42 and have really started dating for the first time now. So want to kind of get your perspective, what maybe changed or shifted, sort of why now? Hear that part of your story.
Okay, great. Yeah. I think for me, growing up in a very kind of conservative religious culture and religion and faith, like marriage, connection, romantic relationships was always super important. It's something that I think is important in society. Like it's talked about as like the most important level that you can achieve. And I don't necessarily agree with that as much anymore, but growing up in that space, there was always this like desperation kind of pushing for finding that and needing that connection and feeling like I needed that to be valid just as a person and as a human. And so I've gone through many difficulties trying to date as a teen, in my 20s, in my 30s, and it's kind of been off and on as things have gone on in my life. And I've gone through some difficult things. I think lots of people have, but I've gone through, different areas of abuse in my life that made things harder for me in terms of connection or wanting to connect. And I think for me over the last few years, it's been a desire to reclaim a part of myself and a part of my life, and feeling like I want to overcome some fears that I had. Whether I end up in a relationship or not is not the goal and wasn't the goal when I started this. And that's been really empowering to me to just be able to kind of own who I am more fully, the parts of myself that I used to have shame over, and really kind of start this process of like, I am worthy and deserving of the love that I'm seeking. And I'm going to try for it, but it's not the outcome that I'm attached to. And that's been really kind of the process or why I chose to start now.
So fascinating, me. I have several follow-up questions that just came from that, because I know a lot of the flirties right away will relate to your story, where they feel maybe this pressure that can come from society, from their culture, religion, from their family to be in a relationship. And it seems like it's kind of like, I'm sure you've gotten this question throughout your life. It's like, well, why are you single? Like, surely like you want to be in a relationship, right? Kind of like eyes on us. I'm in my late 30s, single as well. Like, what's wrong? Like, well, maybe I'm doing some inner work. And so, or, I'm looking to date on my own time. And so I want to ask you now, some of the things you did to just in this process of reclaiming your power, perhaps some ways that you healed outside of being in a relationship.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I have gotten it a lot. And I think many people can relate to this. What's wrong with you? Like, I've been on, I can't even tell you the number of first dates I've been on where men have just flat out been like, they found that information and been like, well, what's wrong with you? And that is something that I think a lot of single people face, and they internally face it because they say that to themselves all the time. You're not being loved. You're not in a relationship. You've never had experience. What's wrong with you? And so I went through years of doing that and years of hiding the fact that I was single, hating being in situations where people are going to be talking about dating or relationships and acting like I had this experience so I didn't have to feel bad about myself. And so I think it's a really hard thing, because it's also something that I'm glad that we're talking about now. And even as of 5-10 years ago, this wasn't something that people talked about. And so I think there's a sense of going back to that original thing, that loneliness piece, right? There's this sense of feeling like I'm so alone in this. And when we think we're so alone in this, then of course we're going to place blame on us and us alone, without the full understanding that so much of relationship is luck. So much is luck, timing. And I don't think we talk about that component of it enough, is that I can do a million things. I can work on myself in a million different ways. And I think that's valid and wonderful. We should all be doing that. But there's also this component that I have no control over, and life will unfold in the ways that it will do. And if I can detach myself from what am I not doing and understand that there's luck involved in this process, and there's timing, and there's lots of other things, then maybe I won't have so much shame, and I can focus on trying to build my life and make it a beautiful life in or out of a relationship, because I think everybody deserves that. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, that we all deserve love, right? And affection and connection. And so I think I want to ask now some ways that you did, some strategies for healing that I think will be really useful for the flirties.
Okay. Yeah. There's lots of things these days. Obviously, therapy is a helpful tool to be able to kind of analyze your different experience, because I think that's kind of hard in general, is that everybody is so unique, and their journey is going to be so unique to dating, to their singleness, to loneliness, to healing. It's going to be all of the above. And so I think kind of finding people that can support you in that. And I think honestly, finding myself living more in the present. And I know that's very hard to do. Like when you've gone through like difficult things in your life, and you can be sucked into the past, or you're pining and you're wanting, which is not wrong to want. It's okay to want a future. It's okay to want those things in your life.
Absolutely.
But I think when you make them all of your life and you make the wanting all of your life, then it takes away from you being able to build a life that you can love with or without that. And so I think kind of having that initial thing. And then the other component for me is analyzing grief in a way and allowing yourself to grieve the things that you didn't have. Because a lot of times I think we put up walls and we don't grieve. And we think we aren't entitled to it. That I can't grieve the fact that I didn't have a teenage romance or a relationship, that I don't know what it's like to, you know, be asked out to dances, or like there's so much grief to this part of life. And if we don't allow ourselves to grieve, we're going to hold on to that and carry that with us. And so it will be hard to heal wherever we land. And so grieving, I think, is really important, and letting yourself honor that part of yourself, that it's okay to want something. It's okay to want connection. It's okay to want a romantic relationship. You don't need to feel ashamed of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. And helpful for me as well, as I heard from some of the flirties setting this up. It's like sort of in their internal monologue as well. Like this should have happened, or they have some guilt or some shame or even embarrassment that like it didn't happen. They didn't have the teenage romance, or they didn't have sort of like the high school sweetheart, or like, you know, the prom date that ended in like a crazy romantic, you know, kiss or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really, really fantastic as a strategy to help us come into the present moment and really be able to be with ourselves, is to grieve those experiences that we wish we maybe had, that we really maybe wanted, but then not having us attach, right, like our story and our worth to the lack of those experiences, so that we can come here into the present. Something I talk about from time to time as flirt coach, yoga teacher comes out on occasion, the present moment. So important. Okay, we're going to stay in this space for a moment more, a few more questions. And I want to ask you now a little bit about that loneliness video that you made that went really, really viral, speaking to maybe the loneliness we can feel in relationships sometimes, but really for the single flirty out there that just feels like something's missing.
Yeah. And that video was, I did not expect that to do what it ended up doing. And I think it taught me just how lonely we are as a society right now, and how difficult it is, and how so many people connect to it. I think it's somewhere in the realm of like, it was a video I put out in April. So it hasn't been too long ago. It was in April. And I think when it first went viral within a week, it was like at 6 million views. And now it's at like 11 million.
What? I caught it a little early on the viral wave. That's incredible.
Yeah. So it's like 11 million people that have kind of seen that and related to that. And you're right. There is a lot of chatter in that comment section from people who are in relationships, to people who've never been in relationships, to the whole spectrum of people. And I think what's been interesting is a lot of times, and I know I'll answer the question kind of about the single flirties, but I think sometimes for those married folks and the people, there's this tendency, and I think we see it on both sides, to compare. Like, so I get a lot of like, well, you think that's lonely, try being in a relationship and being lonely. Or like, you think you're lonely in a relationship, try never having had one. And there's this back and forth of just trying to compare. And I really think there's enough space for all of us to have our feelings and emotions, and each of them is painful, and each of them is different. And it's going to be even more unique to you based on your life experience. But I think that idea of loneliness is something we need to figure out as a society. I think we need to talk about it more. And I think we need to be building connection and understanding that. And I think I struggled for the longest time in not valuing my platonic and familial relationships and not placing them at a higher level, because I was always wanting the romantic one. So it was like I had these good relationships, but I was never allowing it to fulfill me fully. And I know that there are components that won't in terms of that whole idea. But I always kept those lower because I just was like, well, until I get that, then these won't match. Like I won't be able to match until I have the romantic relationship. And so I think valuing those platonic relationships, those familial relationships, and understanding that they can give you a lot and they won't give you everything, but there's value there, and working hard to be the type of friend you want, the type of family member you want, so that those relationships can be fulfilling for you.
Yeah, I think that like the word you just said it that really comes to mind is fulfillment, and allowing your connections and relationships that you do have in your life with your friends, with your family, could even be neighbors, right? Your bestie at work. Allow all these connections to fulfill you and be nurturing. And this is something that I've had to work on too, is not placing that romantic relationship, that romantic connection as up there on the top of the mountain, and everything else is just somehow not as good, or right, it's just not on the same level, but connection is connection nonetheless. And I agree with you. I think it's a big reason I do what I do. I think there's a lot of lonely people out there, and it's almost like a secret that we don't talk about, because I feel like, well, I shouldn't be lonely because I have X, Y, and Z things. I have a roof over my head. I'm able to, put food in my fridge. So therefore, this shouldn't be a problem. It's almost like we feel guilty sometimes.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I've seen that. And I felt that myself, as just feeling bad that I feel lonely. But I think, there's nothing, again, there's shame in it. And I think when we understand, I think that's the whole point, is like when we feel ashamed, we don't voice what we're feeling. And so we feel even more isolated in our experience, and we pull back even more because we think we're supposed to be okay, or we're supposed to be fine because we have all these things. And sometimes it's important to stop looking at the shoulds and just focus on what is. And if we can focus on what is, then we can work through it in very much a quicker manner than when we continue to push it away with like all the shoulds that are out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something I learned from my grandma. It's like, you can't ask, I mean, just one piece of advice she's handed down to the whole family. It's like the could, would, should type questions of the world are distracting us. They're taking us into the past and into the future. And if we can come back to the present. All right, I want to ask you this question now, and this came from one of your videos too, about and a couple of the flirties asked this too. It's about wanting more. It's about being fulfilled, right? So we're in the present moment. We've really done some healing. We're really feeling fulfilled in our connections, and yet wanting more. If you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that longing, that desire for something more, that hope in something more, I think is a very powerful emotion. And I think sometimes we, again, place judgment on it when a lot of our human development, just even of itself, is for connection, right? And so it's, again, okay to want more. It's okay to want those experiences that you've never had. And I think for the longest time, I didn't allow myself to want those things because I felt like hope could be a double-edged sword, where if I did want those things too much, it was painful. And if people would talk to me about hope, I would get angry because it would feel like, that's easy for you to say, like, you're not living my lived experience. Hope can be painful. And I think for me, it's this idea that we can set things down for a time. I don't always have to be hoping. I don't always have to be trying. I don't always have to be seeking. And I think that is a powerful tool in our life to help us when we're in these moments of like deep longing or deep wanting for something. And so it's not about, again, potentially not having that experience, but grieving it and then channeling that energy into the things that do bring you fulfillment in life. And it's a hard thing to do. Like none of the things that we're talking about today are easy to do. They take a lot of work, and I think they take a lot of self-compassion. And I think a lot of people who have been lonely or single for a long time, they don't have as much self-compassion as they should. They could have that compassion for others, but they feel like a lot of their lot in life or their lack of things in life is due to, again, the ownership of like what I didn't do, instead of attaching some of that ownership to it's just life. Like that, it's just life. And sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. And when I can detach myself from all of the ownership of where I am at the moment, then so much more healing can come into my heart. And those longings don't feel as deep.
I love that. I think right there, wrapped up in that answer, were many strategies to practice self-compassion. I can imagine the flirty being like, oh, how do I do that? How do I practice self-compassion? Come back, listen, listen to the whole interview, the whole episode. But that part right there, really, really, really good. Okay, so we're gonna get into some dating strategies, some dating questions coming. And so I'm curious now if there was like sort of like, my question is why now? Is there like, we talked about that a little bit earlier, but is it, because I got some questions. It's like, Benjamin, like I'm in my late 20s, I'm in my 30s, 40s, 50s, and I'm not sure if I'm ready. Is there a moment maybe where I will know? Do I just need to try? Yeah, how I can maybe know that I'm ready.
I think it's kind of a mixture of you might not know exactly that you're ready or that you want to do that or to step back into dating. And I think it's back to that idea too of a lot of times we think if we're not perpetually trying, then we're missing the one opportunity. Like, I'm missing the one opportunity. It's because I wasn't trying here. And like, you can spin yourself into madness of all the ways in which, like, if I didn't try here, then that means I didn't get this. And then that person could have been, you could spin yourself into lots of different ways. And so that idea of like, I don't always have to be trying. And one strategy for me was, having seen some videos, seen some things, and just being like, heck, like, I'm lonely. Like, I want this experience, but I also want to reclaim that part of myself that doesn't attach my worth to this experience. I'm going to sign up for an app. It is awful. Dating apps are not always fun, but I'm going to do it. And I'm going to walk into that, and I'm going to be vulnerable, and I'm going to allow myself to be vulnerable. And for me, I was like, you're going to do this for a month. And you're going to try, and you're going to put your effort into it. Because I think there've been times in my life where I've not put effort, and I've said I was putting effort because it just felt too complicated and too much attached again to my worth and value. And so a strategy for me was like, I'm going to do it for a month, and then I'm going to take a break. And then if I want to, in a couple more months, I can try again. And I think for me, that was really helpful, is just not placing this, I don't have to be continuously on the hamster wheel of dating and seeking and finding. And we are told that as single people too often, that like, well, what are you doing to put yourself out there? And why aren't you? And like, they just name off a million things. It's okay to rest, but then it's okay to try. And I think having a balance of that throughout the process has been helpful for me.
I love that. I think that's going to be really, really helpful for the flirties too, who are in that space of, I'm not sure. Do I? Don't I? So good. Really about that balance of trying versus forcing. It's like when things seem super, super forced, and it's just, it's sort of like you're trying to run uphill and just not getting anywhere. It's almost like you're running in quicksand, versus trying, setting a goal, which, I mean, as a coach, I love the 30-day goal is so, so good. And then putting in the effort behind that, and then just detaching from all expectations that this has to then lead to XYZ outcome. It's fantastic. So did you use an app to start dating?
So I did. So I just randomly chose one that was in my head, which was Bumble. So I used Bumble.
Okay.
And I paid for it. And I was like, oh, but like, I think sometimes you have to, because I haven't done dating apps for a while. And so I didn't realize kind of how things have changed. It's probably been like 6 or 7 years since I've done them.
Okay.
And so paid for a month for Bumble, started just connecting and talking to people and things like that, and setting up dates. And I felt like for me, I wanted to chat for a little bit, but then I wanted to just let's meet. Like,
Yep.
let's just see if there is connection. Let's see if there's conversation. Let's just see how that goes.
Yes.
And so I feel like that was important to me. And then I think the other thing that was really helpful was, and again, it's hard, but trying to remember that like rejection is redirection, and rejection isn't often about me. It's not always about me. And so like, if I didn't vibe with somebody, that's okay.
Yeah.
If they didn't vibe with me, that's okay. And again, I'm just looking for connection. And if we're not connecting on a level that I feel like is enriching my life, why am I going to push myself to be engaging in things that aren't helpful? Like, just because I can check a thing off the box to be like, oh yeah, okay, now I have a relationship. Why would I do that? Like, that's going to be painful for me, and that's going to be painful for the other person. I would rather live alone and deal with my loneliness than to be in a situation just so that I can say I did.
Yeah. I can see it around the world. Flirties, a few of the jaws are dropping because it's like, we have to like, but you in many ways have to arrive into that mindset, right?
And so fake it until you have it.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Fake it until you have it.
Really.
I cannot tell you the faking of my confidence, my like shame. Like, I'm not ashamed of this experience. I'm not ashamed of how I talk about this. Like, the faking sometimes until you're able to fully see that or see parts of that is so 100%. Important.
How I've lived so much of my life because to the outside world looking at you, they don't know. They just see confidence.
Yeah.
They don't
know I'm a mess.
No, they do not. They just see, wow, they got it together. Fake it till you make it. Like, your energy and your thoughts will catch up at some point. Yeah.
Very true. Very true.
Okay. So I know the flirties now are thinking, how were you getting matches? Like, how were you getting the dates? Some maybe a few tips there as far as conversations on the apps, maybe a tip for your profile. Yeah. How do you started to get some traction on the dating apps?
Oh, that's hard. Because again, it feels like you're a salesperson. I mean, you are a salesperson for yourself. You're marketing yourself. And I think that's why there's this weird mix of like vulnerability, because you can see people being vulnerable on apps as well as like kind of fakeness in a way. So you see like both of those kind of in tandem. And I think, being more real and true to yourself, and again, taking it in steps. Like, my about me took like 3 days because I was like, I hate this process. Like, I don't want to tell you I love hiking. Like, I will go on a nice little stroll in the park. I'm not going to go up a mountain for 6 miles, and especially not on a first date with somebody.
Right.
So like, being more true to myself. And I think the other thing, because again, I've gone through my life struggling with a lot of different issues, one of them being body image, one of them being, having been treated very poorly around my size. I've gone up and down in my life. And so I've had people on dates, say things or comment to me about my weight or comment to me about like myself. And so putting pictures that are just me and my full body so that like they know exactly what they're going to be swiping for. And recent ones, because I don't want to be put in a situation where somebody could even question that I wasn't being honest or authentic. Because you just don't need that in your life. Like, life's hard enough. You don't need to add those different layers. And so I think for me, it was looking at every match that came through too, and just being like, hey, if I could see myself just sitting down with this person, whether I felt immediately attracted to them or not, like, and not placing all of it on like, oh, that person is so attractive to me. It's more like, oh yeah, I could totally see myself connecting with them on these 3 things from their profile. I'm going to start a conversation, and then starting that, and then just accepting what came my way. And then also asking and just saying, hey, would you want to go get coffee? Would you want to go get whatever it may be? And that is different than how I've engaged in dating apps in the past, where I was more like waiting, and I just was kind of sitting, and I just was like, I don't have time to lose anymore. Like, you want to meet with me? No? Cool. Okay. Bye. Like,
amen.
Just that whole process.
Yes. Because I think we can get hung up on the apps where it's like I think of the apps as the middleman, the middle person, just helping you make that connection so then you can meet. That's it. It's like not looking to have this one person that you haven't even met yet check every box. It's is there a few things we can talk about, looking like we can make a connection that can hold a little bit of a conversation? Let's go. Coffee it is.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because I currently am in my first relationship ever.
Yes.
And it's been just a couple months, but we didn't meet on the dating apps. We met through TikTok, through the app. Like that's
Oh my
how we ended up
gosh.
meeting. Yeah, he had seen a video of mine and like reached out. And it was right when I had started the apps as well. And at
Yeah.
first I was like, hey, stranger danger, like on TikTok.
Yeah.
But then I was like, Mia, you're on dating apps. You don't know any of these people either. Like, like they're also strangers. So
Right.
so I was like, okay, yeah, sure. And so I said yes. And, you know, we connected from there. And so I think it's again being open. And when you begin to, you know, live your life more authentically to yourself and not try to be anybody else and just be who you are, like things will be pulled into your life in different ways than I think I've ever seen experienced, at least for myself in my own life.
That was going to be, I wanted to hear, because I kind of knew you were in a relationship as I've been following along, first date, second date, third date, right? Watching all the videos. But I did not know this meet cute moment through good old TikTok. So how, that is so exciting. And saying, of course, yes, right? Being open and saying yes to yourself, saying yes to a new connection and just seeing, my goodness, what can happen. All right, I've got a few questions now that came through about some of like this early phase of dating as you're getting to know someone. This one coming through from a flirty who is asking, like, how do you answer the question that probably comes up? How long have you been single? When was your last relationship? And this flirty is saying, you know, for me, it's been many years, and how do I answer that question? Right? Be honest. Probably, but what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you right there. I also just feel for that experience because it is very difficult. It is very hard. And I think there's so many emotions behind that. So to that person that asked, I feel for you. My heart is with you because that is a heavy question that I've had numerous times in my own life.
Yeah.
And I think I've, again, handled it very differently in the past. For me, this time, leaning on my past experiences, I've done a lot of thinking about why I'm asked that question, why we ask people those questions, and this idea that I don't have experience, right? There's this idea, and I've said it myself, like I'm inexperienced. And I've had to come to the understanding I'm not inexperienced at life. I'm inexperienced at this one component of life, which is having a relationship. I'm not inexperienced at relationships. I do friendships really well. I have really good communication. I've done work relationships where there's conflict. And so like I've had to build myself up to realize I'm not inexperienced at life. I'm inexperienced at a component of it. So I'm going to take what I've gained from that experience and I'm going to shift it over to that. So when I had that realization for me, then I can answer with a lot less shame. I can answer with it just has never really happened for me. I've tried for it, but it's never really worked out for me. And then just based on how a person responds to that, it'll give you a lot of information about yourself, about them, about how comfortable they feel with where you're at. And I think people don't feel comfortable sometimes with an answer of, I don't have experience, because we aren't taught in society that that's just a normal part of life for some people. There's nothing wrong with lacking a little bit of romantic experience. But I think it's super important to realize you are experienced in life. You have a lot to lean on. So lean on it and then answer that question with the fake it till you make it, even if you're feeling the shame of never really happened for me. But and then walk into like different parts of relationships or different things that you have to offer.
Yeah. Oh, hanging on every word. That was so amazing that yes, just because you may not have had a lot of a dating experience, you're just starting to date for the first time in your 40s doesn't mean exactly what you said, that you're not experienced at life. And you get to bring all of these skills and all of you and everything you've learned in your other relationships and your career, just with yourself and your own healing into dating, right? It's like, okay, this I got a question now that came through about like how to, I'm dating for the first time in a really long time, or perhaps for the first time ever. How do I even know what's important to me, or maybe know what I want?
Yeah, I think that that's a question that I might that I think you don't have to know the answer for fully. And I think sometimes again we decide that we need to know the answer before I take steps. But it's that idea of stepping into the darkness. Like it's okay to take a couple steps into something where I don't know. And a lot of times that answer gets revealed to us. And sometimes that answer is like, oh, actually, I don't really want this right now, or I don't feel like it's the right time for me. And that's an okay answer to get. But then there's also an answer that you walk into and you can feel, I think, sometimes more than you can know. And I think for me, there was like another video that I had done on one of a first date experience. And it was kind of this awkward exchange where he didn't show up and then I waited and there was this whole thing. And I remember at the end of that video just kind of being like, is this how it's supposed to go? Like, is this, I don't feel anything, but should I keep trying?
Right.
And I think that idea that I'll know more internally. And I felt like I knew that when I started talking to the person that I'm with now, of like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like. Very different than what I was experiencing when I was forcing myself to see connection, when again, it's okay that there's not.
Right.
It just wasn't happening. So I think, yeah, what you want will sometimes come to you the more you continue to do and to live your life authentically.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So much. And speaking to a little bit, because we've touched on rejection and throughout the interview, this episode today. And I think I want to ask this question now about fear. I love talking about fear on Flirtations. And so for the flirty that is, maybe they went on that first date and now they're like, "Ugh, I'm not sure if I'm ready," or they made the profile and then, oh, I deleted it. I'm feeling apprehensive. I'm just having some fear. If you could speak to that experience a little bit, and if maybe you've had some fear as well. Dating.
Yeah, I'm afraid all the time in my life. Like, like fear is my constant companion a lot of times. And so I feel like even for this, I was like, I've never done a podcast before. Oh, I have a little anxiety. I'm afraid of this. And I was like, you know what? Just walk into that experience. And so I think sometimes, again, just like the loneliness component, we think we're alone in the way that we feel about things. And I think sometimes we see fear as something that's supposed to tell us that we need to stop, when a lot of times it's just kind of, I like the difference between fear and uncomfortable. Sometimes when I'm uncomfortable, I'm telling myself I'm afraid, but I'm not really afraid. I'm uncomfortable because I'm not used to this experience.
Yeah.
It's normal that it's not going to feel the most comfortable, but my comfort level, like I'm not going to perish from that. Like I will be okay. Right. I can feel uncomfortable and I can move through it. And then when I get to the other side and I realize that I did that, two things happen for me. I feel proud of myself that I did something that I was afraid of. And then I realize it wasn't as bad as I thought. And so then when I confront the next fearful experience, it's like, okay, I have evidence that I'm going to continue through that, because what I have been doing is giving it evidence that when it tells me I'm afraid, I need to stop. And instead, I'm going to say, when it tells me I'm afraid, I'm just going to approach with caution. And then I'm going to overcome that fear. And then it's going to continue to build my confidence so that I'm less afraid as time goes by.
Yeah. Yeah. A little bit fake it till you make it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah. And I think like using it, like use the fear. It's not there to stop you. It's there to tell you something. And maybe it's figuring out for yourself, what is it telling me? And we're all going to have it tell us something different. Maybe it's telling me I'm stuck on my body image issues and I need to kind of work on some of that. Or maybe it's telling me that I have kind of unresolved like trauma from past relationships or experiences that I need to look at.
Yeah.
Or it's like, it's telling me something.
Yeah.
And let me focus on that. And then let me work through that.
Yes. Allowing fear in many ways to be a teacher. I love that reframe for me. Whereas if you sort of attach to that fear and then have that fear become a part of your story that something's wrong or that you can't do something, it now may really fuels and plays into your anxiety as well. And it creates like this feedback loop. And then here we go. I've like, my goodness, had to work through so much fear. I feel like
Yeah.
in many ways it's my best friend. I got fear like hanging out on my shoulder all day, every day. There isn't a moment I go to set up an interview and hit record that I don't have fear putting out a new episode, teaching a yoga class. I mean, standing up there at the front of a studio, like, oh my gosh, it's
Mhm.
scary AF.
Yeah,
But
it
I
is.
know that only through that fear is how I'm going to continue to be able to show up the way I want to show up, right? I want to
Yeah.
have a podcast. I want to teach yoga. I want to do all these things. And at some point, the fear just has to be a teacher rather than a barrier.
Yeah, definitely. And that
Yeah.
idea of like, what's the worst that can happen? Like,
Yeah.
what is the worst that can happen? And I think that
Hmm.
to myself often. And I think, so what? You make a fool of yourself, or so what? You look
Yeah.
like you're inexperienced, or so what? You don't have a good time. That's
Yeah.
30 minutes of my life on that date that I didn't have a good time.
Hmm.
I learned something. It taught me something.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, like, what's the worst that can happen? You know?
Right. Right. Yeah, I feel the same way. What's maybe one or two dating strategies you could offer from your dating experience thus far for the flirty that is looking to have that first date, or maybe they've gone on that first date, they're dating for the first time in a long time. Yeah, one or two strategies that you feel have really helped you.
I think it's I think for me, especially, I mean, there is cultural shift in this and everything, but a lot of times it's you're always on the back foot as a woman, like waiting for things to come to you,
Mm,
waiting for things
mm,
to be asked, waiting for
hmm.
things. And there is some sense of like uncomfortableness, but I think that that tide is shifting, and I think it's okay
Yeah.
to. Like, it's okay to ask. It's okay to kind of,
Oh,
show that interest and ask the things. I want a second date, or do you like, how is this going for you? And so
yeah.
I think for me, the two strategies would be to do that more. Just ask. And again, a rejection or a no isn't always a character defining thing for me. There's
Yeah.
lots of reasons that that person could be thinking things through, and there could be a whole other reason why they're
Yeah.
saying no to me that has nothing to do with me.
Hmm.
And so, again, knowing I'm going to hear no and then detaching my worth from that no sometimes, but then I'm going to hear yes as well. And then I'm going to learn from those things. So I think that would be my first. And I think my second is working on communication and knowing it's okay to communicate and to ask questions. And if you
Yeah.
don't feel like you're getting what you need in that relationship, it's okay to ask for things. It's okay to ask how they're feeling. It's okay to ask how they're doing. It's
Yes.
okay to ask what they're needing or wanting
Yep.
without it being like you being either pushy or needy or all those kind of words that
Mm,
we attach to different
yep.
behaviors.
Yep.
Like, communication is so important. And I think that we, out of fear of
Hmm.
not getting it right or losing something we feel is good, we choose not to communicate. And sometimes that spirals and becomes what ends up ending things for us. When if we would just have communicated at the beginning, we could have understood and maybe things would have gone a different way.
Mm. So good. Yes, it's especially if you're online, a lot of the dating advice, especially I love that you describe this experience dating as a woman where it's like you're kind of on the back foot a little bit, like you're sort of in that space of waiting, rather waiting for the guy to initiate, to plan, right, to text.
Mhm.
And yeah, if you're getting dating advice from online, a lot of the advice falls into that camp. And I know myself, I struggle with that. I've given that advice from time to time, and it never feels authentic because I would much rather daters do exactly what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Communicating, being an advocate for yourself, choosing yourself, and just also prioritizing a connection that feels fulfilling. I love how
Yeah.
you were talking about earlier in this in the episode, right? Not chasing those connections just to check a box or to say
Mhm.
you have the partner, or maybe it's even for short-term gratification to avoid discomfort. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like it's like life has taught me, and living alone for so long has taught me that I can do that. I can live
Mm,
alone. I think we feel like we can't. I feel like we think that the loneliness or the pain or whatever will not will be our demise, but like I can live alone. And so now that I know that, that's a gift that I think singleness has brought me. Long-term singleness has brought me. It's a gift that I know that. A lot of people don't. They go from relationship to relationship feeling like they have to have one in order to survive. I've had friendships like that. And so the gift of long-term singleness is like, okay, no, like I can do this. I've done it for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
So if I know I can do this, what I want is something that enriches my life. And if it doesn't enrich my life, it doesn't have to be perfect, but if it isn't enriching my life, then that's okay. And I can let that go and I can move into being alone with myself or looking for something else that enriches my life.
The gift that is singleness. It's so true. I want to ask you this question now, and I've kind of been holding it to the end, right? It's for the flirty that is like, seeing content out there or just watching, movies, Hallmark movies, Disney movies, whatever, and feeling like it's too late, right? The opportunities have passed me by. They're sort of identifying maybe as the late bloomer, which that term alone gives me the ick, but it's, one that gets widely used. So for the flirty listening, that is just feeling like, I don't know, it's too late. What do you say?
I mean, I hate that term as well, even though I've used it many times myself, because I feel like that's how you connect with other people that are in that shared experience, is that term, because I've been blooming all of my life in many areas of my life. I'm not late to blooming. Like I have a wonderful field of flowers of a beautiful life. I have a lot of weeds in that life as well that I've tried to pull out and work through. And so I'm not late to any of that. But I guess the first thing again is just to like hear you and see you in those feelings, that's a real feeling, to feel like you are, to feel like life has passed you by and it's not something that you can get. I feel like I've lived that for quite a while of my life. If feeling after 35, I was like, well, this is it. Like, this is just going to be my life. I've been trying for more than 15 years. I'm going to be alone forever. And I don't necessarily think you have to believe that you'll find it. I think trying and again, building your life. And sometimes those things walk into your life. And that's what I feel like it was for me. And just this knowledge that too late to whom? I guess that's the question I would ask. Like, who is setting the standard? Too late to whom? For anything. I know there's that component of being too late for women to motherhood, like in a lot of ways in terms of biological children, of what they want or what that looks like. And again, it goes back to that key component of grieving those things that maybe you won't get. But it's not too late to find connection, and it's not too late to have experiences you've never had. If you would have told me in March that I would be in a relationship in October, I would have laughed in your face. I would have said, there's no way in this world, because I didn't believe it. But I didn't have to believe it to take action and to take steps that then ended up bringing it into my life. And so I think that that's so powerful, is like that idea of like, I'll hold that belief for you. Lean on people who can hold that belief for you, and just take those steps to fulfill your life more in all areas. And then I really hope for you that romantic relationship comes. And I think what I've learned in this experience is that if tomorrow my relationship ends, like I will just be grateful that I had these moments and I had these experiences and I tried something new that I've never had before. I'll be very grateful for that. But I don't think it would stop me from thinking about how there could be more in the future for me. We don't know what life is going to give us. Right. And that's the lesson I've learned of this year. We have no idea what life has in store for us. Yeah. And that's a beautiful thing and a scary thing. And so I think that's what helps me live more presently, is that knowledge.
All the feels, yes, really this duality of, feeling fulfilled and having gratitude, and perhaps still wanting more, still having that yearning, that desire for what comes next, or what's like having that belief that, just holding on to the belief. I really think we're hopeful romantics here on Flirtations. Yes. All right. I have this question now that I thought I definitely wanted to ask here in the episode today. And it's from a flirty who says, hey, I am dating the person that doesn't have a lot of experience. just dating and with even physical intimacy, just overall being in a romantic relationship, how can I be the most supportive partner I can?
Well, I think that's a great question that they
Mhm.
want to, that they
Yeah.
want to be that supportive person. And um, I think I've had conversations with the person that I recently started dating those same things because I feel like there's this level of insecurity that I feel
Mm.
in some experiences. Again, while I do have experience in a lot of life and I'm leaning into that, there are some components of it that I just maybe won't have.
Mhm.
And so I think it comes back to that communication and, being able to talk through when those moments are hard or when they're difficult. And I think we can, again, all feel energy shifts. I feel like, we have sometimes like, hey, how are you? Like, and it's like, yeah, I'm good. And you can tell that person's not good.
Yeah.
And sometimes we leave it alone. But I think sometimes maybe figuring out a pattern for them as a relationship to figure out like, when do I need to check in and when do I need to like let that be and let you kind of sit through that
Mm.
and kind of work through that.
Mhm.
And then if you feel comfortable to bring it to me, then maybe that's what we need to do. But I think just having that open communication of understanding there are going to be some insecurities. And those insecurities are just because you're doing something new. The person's doing something new.
Yeah.
And they don't have maybe a full grasp or understanding of it. And then that importance of communication across the board when it comes to small intimacies like holding hands to larger intimacies of like what that looks like further down the road. And I think
Absolutely.
it's so crucial to just be able to talk through those things.
Mm. Yeah. And I mean, by submitting this question for the episode, right? I think already there's such an incredibly supportive partner. I just love how
Yes.
you really
Yeah.
spoke to communication, but also curiosity, right? It's yeah, if someone doesn't have a lot of dating experience, there may present some anxieties, some insecurities. And so just being able to be with them with that, just acknowledge when they do come up and just be like, hey, right, I'm here for you. Like
Mhm.
that's
Yeah, like that reassurance is so good to
oh
just be like,
yes.
okay, like, because I think as a lifelong single, I've sometimes like, am I bothering everybody? Like I walk around being like, I'm sorry I'm bothering you. I'm sorry I'm bothering you. Like that idea of not being able to own my space fully is there sometimes. And so this
Yeah.
idea of like, it's okay to own space. And especially if you're in a relationship with somebody, you're going to need and want to be able to turn to them with the small things and the large things. And it shouldn't be a burden that you're talking to them. You should always be respecting boundaries. But I
Right,
think
right.
there's a different conversation between those two things of like, you're not a burden just because you don't know
Mm,
something, you can ask
exactly.
and then that other person can check for clarification too.
Yeah. Mm, so good. Yeah, I just have, I think, two more questions for you as these conversations go so quickly. This one here is just any maybe parting words of wisdom, if there's a mission you have on Flirt Talk, maybe what you hope to see more of in dating. Yeah, how you might want to take that question any direction you want.
Okay. I think I say a couple things on my TikTok a lot. And one of them that I think I say it in hopes that I will also believe it more fully is that like you are worthy of the love that you seek. Like right here, right now, you
Yes.
don't need to be changing a million different things. Like, should you be improving on your life and should you want to self improve? Obviously, we all should want those things,
Hmm.
but you're worthy of it. And there's this myth that I had that I believe is a myth that for the longest time I always have heard of like, you just need to love yourself before somebody else will love you. And I don't think that that's true. I've never believed that to be true, but I've heard it as a single person more than almost anything.
Yeah.
And it was harmful because I'd gone through a lot in my life, a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, a lot of abuse that made it hard for me to love who I was.
Mm,
And so it was kind of this double-edged sword of like, here I am being lonely, but then also it's my fault because I
yeah.
don't love myself.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do that. And I think that that's a myth because I don't think that everybody that's in a relationship loves themselves fully. Like, I think we'd
Yeah.
be a way better world if that was the case. And
Yeah.
so that's not helpful. That's something we should be seeking for. But then that's why I go back to that idea of like, you're worthy of the love that you are seeking right here in this very moment. And I hope that you can find it and I hope that you can give it.
Yeah. Yeah. So beautiful. I am just very thankful and grateful that you were here on Flirtations today to share more about yourself and your story so that the flirties can get to know you. Kind of a random question here to conclude the interview.
Okay.
But Mia, what's in your Trader Joe's haul?
Oh, anything new. I'm a sucker for anything. Trader Joe's always has the new goods, and so they'll get me.
Yes.
Yeah, they'll get me.
You and me both. I don't, well, I'm wearing it a lot in my videos, but I work at Trader Joe's.
Oh, you do? I didn't know that. That's
yes,
awesome.
I do. Yes, I am a crew member at store 745. So the fact that I have seen Trader Joe's hauls on your page fills me with even more joy that I already have watching.
Well, there'll be
videos.
more in the future. There'll be more in the future. I love a Trader Joe's. I love a good haul. So yes.
So it's holiday season. Get ready. Seasonal items are in full swing. But this is just for you and everyone listening. If you're near Trader Joe's, grab them fast because I can make no promises how long they might be available.
Yep. Get your pumpkin spice JoJo's. They're probably already gone by now because we're way too close into October.
Yeah, those are gone. But peppermint season is here.
And I love it. Yeah. Start early, folks.
Oh my gosh. Mia, thank you so much for being on the show today. Only other thing, I'll have everything listed in the show notes, but the flirties that want to follow along, watch your videos, where can they find you on the internet?
Yeah. So basically, I mean, my Instagram's private, but I don't know. It's pretty random, but I'm on TikTok. So
yes,
Mad MNC, M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie. So Mad MNC is my handle on TikTok. And it's a random mix of my life and my musings. And join me over there if you're single and want to talk about that stuff.
Yes.
It's a fun space.
All right. I'm going to send all the flirties your way.
Hey.
Thank you so much. Flirties, that's a wrap on this episode of Flirtations. Thank you so much to our guest, Mia Chard, for having this conversation with us today and sharing so much about her personal experiences and life out there dating. This was a really incredible conversation, and I hope you got so much value from it as I know I did. Thank you to Mia. Thank you to you, the flirties, for listening, tuning in, streaming wherever you may be in the world. I hope you enjoyed this episode thoroughly. And if you did, please leave a rating, a review, subscribe to the show so you don't miss a thing. Share this with a friend, someone you want to share some BFE, big flirt energy with. I'd love it if you did. And yes, my name is Benjamin, here at Flirt Headquarters, signing off, wishing you lots of hope and joy and fun and pleasure and all the good things in your dating life and beyond. Yes, as we're out there making connections, looking for those fulfilling relationships of all kinds, all the while not forgetting the most important relationship we perhaps will ever have, as the one we have with ourselves, is what I'm trying to say. All right, signing off here. Flirty. Happy flirting.